Welcome to the LynchFit Podcast. I am co-host and producer Nick Skolnick, and I'm very happy to have you here today. We are going to be diving into carbohydrates and a lot of the basic information that everybody needs to know about one of the most important macronutrients in our life. Let's get right to it. Mike, how the hell are you?
I'm good, brother. How are you?
I'm really good. So we're just going to get right into it. And today we're talking about carbs, obviously. And everybody hears a lot about carbs. No carb, low carb, carb up. There's simple carbs, there's complex carbs. It doesn't seem simple to me. It seems really complicated. Can you break it down a little bit for us? Tell us what carbs are, in a general sense.
So you have three macronutrients: protein, fats, and carbohydrates. And carbohydrates are going to be a place where you get good quality glucose for all the cells in your body, from your brain to muscle contractions. All cells in the body need glucose, and we get that. The best place to get it is through complex carbohydrates.
And why do we need the glucose?
All cells need it. Every single cell in your body prefers glucose as an energy source. You can get into making ketones, and that's why the ketogenic diet has become so popular. But in a perfect world, in a perfect environment, our cells, and most people agree with this, there's people that advocate the ketogenic diet, but most people agree that all cells are most happy when they get a good supply of steady glucose.
What is it about carbs that makes them so confusing?
Other than lots of bad information on the internet, it's where are you getting your carbohydrates? What is the delivery system, and how fast are those carbohydrates being shuttled into your body? Are they slow and released? And that's what most people want most of the time, except elite athletes, there is a time to get a blood sugar spike. But most people, or a lot of people that are suffering with their health, or suffering with body fat issues, are not getting carbohydrates from a steady source that is coupled with fiber and protein and a mixed meal per se. They're getting straight up glucose, and they're having these wild fluctuations in blood sugar, and they're laying down adiposity or body fat, and it's a vicious cycle that they're caught in. And there's an addictive nature that I'm sure we'll talk about at some point. And that's where the real confusion lies.
So what kind of carbs are there? There are good carbs and bad carbs? What's that all about?
Yes, so you have three different types of carbohydrates that we'll talk about. You have complex carbohydrates, and then you have fibrous carbohydrates, and then you have fruits. And a lot of people, unfortunately, the reason why they do get scared is they're getting their carbohydrates in a processed form. Now that processed form can be in straight up table sugar, or it can be from whole grains or starches that are pulverized, processed, bleached, and turned into powder that gets into the system rapidly, and this causes a myriad of problems.
So what are some of the processed carbohydrates that people are putting in their body all the time?
So processed carbohydrates right away is going to be added sugar. Added sugar to your coffee, tea, desserts that you may make, pancakes or anything like that, where there's straight up added sugar, or packets of sugar that you're adding to, at Starbucks or Dunkin' Donuts, wherever you get your coffee. And then you're going to have your things like, chips and pretzels and even flours that they put into certain gravies and sauces and stuff like that. So these are going to be the carbohydrates that are really going to cause havoc on the human body.
Okay, and what about the good carbohydrates? You said fibrous carbohydrates?
So you would go with starch first, and in starch, you're going to have, if they're in their whole form, they're going to have fiber. Because fiber, there's some people that may not do well with fiber, and that's another video, but most people are going to do well with starch. And in starch, you have your complex carbohydrate, and there is fiber in there, and that's going to be things like your sweet potatoes and yams and red skin potatoes, and even baked potatoes with the skin, and peas and lentils and beans, whole grains like brown rice, wild rice, buckwheat, quinoa, and that's going to have the starch component, but it's also going to be in its whole form, and it's going to have the hull, and it's going to have the jacket of fiber, which slows the entry into the blood system. Then after that, then we have, everybody knows the benefits of vegetables, provided you don't have an allergy or a GI issue that you can't digest and assimilate vegetables. And for those, I feel that those are like almost a free carbohydrate, because the amount of carbohydrates in there is nullified by the digestion process. And that's going to be mostly green vegetables: asparagus, broccoli, cauliflower, kale, leafy greens.
It's not going to come as a surprise to people that you should be adding more vegetables to your diet, right?
I mean, for the most part, yes, unless you have, and they're a diet for anybody that's watching. If you're trying to lose weight, they're really add a ton of bulk to the intestinal tract and the stomach, which can aid in weight loss, lowering cholesterol, and can make the dieter, if someone is dieting, full. So, and the carbohydrates that are in there, again, are nullified. The small amount of carbohydrates are burned off in digestion, but they are a really good package of fiber and lots of vitamins and minerals. And lastly, we would talk about fruits, which are sugar, and they're usually a combination of fructose and glucose. But again, in their whole form, they have skin and fiber, and some fruits have a thing called pectin, like apples and pears, which slow digestion. So those are going to be the three basic food, what's called foodstuffs, that you get your carbohydrates from. So your starch, your non-starchy vegetables that are very high in fiber, and then your fruits. So those are going to be the three places that people are going to look to get good quality carbohydrates that are not processed.
So if you're thinking about these carbohydrates as the fuel for your body, putting in those processed carbohydrates is just like putting in crappy gasoline.
That's correct. Yeah. Basically, carbohydrates work like certain drugs, like cocaine. The faster the hit, the faster the letdown, right? So your blood sugar will swing up, your pancreas will produce insulin, and you'll become low blood sugar.
And to be clear, those quick hits come from the sugars.
Yes, when they're in their processed form, they start to digest and assimilate on your tongue. So as soon as they hit your tongue, it's getting into your system.
Which you know, because if you have a piece of cake, the fireworks start going off in your brain right away, and you know you're loving this, you're feeling good, and you're going back for more immediately. Almost.
Yeah, well, you're getting a blood sugar hit, and you're also getting a dopamine hit in your brain. Our bodies crave glucose. We need glucose. You think about if you were to get a stomach flu, and you were vomiting, and you had chronic diarrhea, and you had to go to the hospital. This has happened, unfortunately, to me a few times in my life. They give you a saline packet, and in that saline packet, IV, is glucose. And immediately, if you're dehydrated or whatever, you come to life, because our bodies all need glucose. But when you get it in such a concentrated form, and it's so readily available, you get this blast of sugar, and it lights up all the reward centers in your brain. But because glucose in large amounts is toxic, you could actually go into a coma. Your body overcorrects and produces a hormone from the pancreas called insulin to pull the glucose down. And sometimes, especially as we get older, we become resistant to this insulin, and it does too good of a job, and we become low blood sugar. And no human on earth will feel good or perform well or have tight cognition if they're low blood sugar. So if you're low, where you want to go again? You want to go high. And so it's not, let's be honest, they taste really good too. There's people manufacturing these so you want more and more. So that's another issue. So they taste really good on top of it, and they're seasoned, and they're salted, and they're crunchy, and they have fat added, which is addictive in nature. But take that all away, strip that all away. It's the blood sugar swing that you're going back for another hit, because you're high and then you're low.
Right, people are up against billions of dollars worth of scientific studies to tweak these processed carbohydrates in a way that are tasty and that keep you coming back for more. They design the boxes to be attractive. The whole thing is set up, the whole industry is set up to deliver you cheap carbohydrates at all times to keep you addicted, to keep you all day looking for that next hit.
Absolutely. And they're winning. They're winning. 80% of all Americans at this point are obese and pre-diabetic or not diabetic at this point. So the addiction is a real thing.
Now, the diabetes, not all diabetes, but diabetes that comes from diet, it comes from spiking that insulin too much, too often?
Correct. So what happens is when you keep on getting these hits of blood sugar and you keep on producing more and more insulin, your body gets resistant to its own insulin, and the beta cells become burnt out, essentially. The good news is it's reversible.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Through dietary change, exercise, all the regular ways?
Building muscle mass, training the appropriate way, which we're going to be doing videos on, and, eating the right type of carbohydrates and not getting these blasts and these lows and the blast and the low.
And it feels to me like this is an easy place for people to start to get some of the things that are killing them out of their life, right? Because obviously there's a lot of carbohydrates that people are probably eating throughout the week, unless of course they're on a diet where they're taking these things out. And a lot of them with the added sugars and the processed carbohydrates, just don't buy it, right? I mean, there's a real opportunity for people to make a meaningful change in their diet at the supermarket this week by just listening to a few of these videos that we're making and cutting this crap out of their life.
Yeah, absolutely. And the key is you don't want to, what I always call white knuckle it, and that's just will yourself through. You can will yourself for a while, but discipline is not the only strategy, because eventually you will give in. What you want to do is be armed with the knowledge and the right amount of food so your body is nourished with the right amount of carbohydrates. This way you don't want the bad stuff most of the time. You're getting those slow, natural, packaged in its natural form with the fiber, where you're getting the glucose that your body does need glucose. The ketogenic people would probably argue with me, but I think that most people do better when they're getting a supply of healthy glucose. And when you do get that on a daily basis, it doesn't mean that you won't want birthday cake or cookies, but you will want them 90% less of the time.
So you spoke a little bit about fruit. How should people be incorporating fruit into their everyday diet?
In my opinion, and what I've seen in 30 years in practice, knowing what transformed people's blood work, because at the end of the day, we can have battles on the internet, and there's people that advocate eating as much fruit as possible, and there's people that say you should have no fruit. I argue that they're all wrong, that there's a place for fruit for most people, and there's a sweet spot. No pun intended, right? There's a sweet spot. And first off, that fruit should be in its whole form, preferably with the skin on, like an apple or something like that. And the fructose has a tendency to go more to the liver. So I don't want to get too far into the weeds here, but glucose goes to the muscle for the most part, and your brain and stuff like that, where fructose, which is part of fruit, goes into the liver. And your liver has a small capacity unless you're doing triathlons or you're exercising 4 or 5 hours a day. This is for the average viewer, okay? Fructose will go to the liver. So once the liver is packed with glucose or fructose, it will start to spill over, and some people may know this term, triglycerides. Once that liver is saturated, the body can turn this into a fatty acid called triglyceride. So fructose is sugar, it's natural, it does have the fiber, but it is still sugar. So if you're somebody who's trying to actively lose weight or maintain their weight, I would say 1 to 3 pieces a day for the average person. If you're diabetic, pre-diabetic, and your doctor has told you to stay away from fruit until you become non-diabetic, type 2 diabetes, then maybe 0 pieces of fruit. But for the average person, 1 to 3 pieces. Past that, you may see the triglycerides and the fasted blood sugar elevate. Maybe the body, a lot of our viewers are going to be very concerned about how they look in a bikini or a bathing suit. And you might start to see that your body composition maybe starts trending in a direction that you don't visually like. And just because something's packed with vitamins and minerals, like fruit, doesn't mean that it's going to be. It comes along with sugar too, so it may start to do some things that you don't like. So the people that advocate, fruit is natural. Somebody a long time ago, Nick, lumped fruits and vegetables in the same sentence, and they're different. They're different. They don't belong together. They're both very healthy, but in my mind, in 30 years as a trainer doing nutrition with thousands of people, it's something that really has to be kind of monitored.
And just quickly, not all fruit is created equal either, right? I mean, a cotton candy grape is just a sugar egg, basically. But berries are maybe a little better, a banana is a little better, right? I mean, break that down a little bit for us.
So everybody knows the benefits of berries at this point. They're a low sugar fruit. You want to definitely go on the higher fiber, lower sugar fruits. Doesn't mean that you can't have those higher sugar fruits like the watermelons, but they need to be on the smaller percentage of that fruit intake, and maybe, having that at the, after the tail end of a vigorous workout.
All right, I think we got a lot of really good information about carbs there. People now have a better understanding of good carbs versus bad carbs and how they should be incorporating fruit into their diet. I think that's really helpful. I want to stop here, but in our next video, I really want to talk about all of the sneaky places that carbs are getting into our diet without us even realizing it. Because I think that's one of the issues, right? A lot of times you know what's best for you, you know what you're eating that you probably shouldn't be, but then there's all this other stuff that's just sneaking in there and you don't even realize it's there. And it's negatively impacting your nutrition, your diet.
Yeah. We're gonna and listen, just a little preview. There's things that we're going to teach the consumer that they can actually be putting the equivalent of a candy bar on their salad and not even know it. And then months later, they're defeated, they give up because they say, you know what, screw it. I just can't lose any weight. So we're going to teach them these hidden traps. And
that leads into all this carb addiction that people have. I mean, I feel carbs calling me. I walk through a store, I do. I mean, you walk through a store, you see all these, they really are. There's chips on the counter that are just saying, you want me, come eat me, the full family size bag, not a single serving.
Yeah, I know all about that.
All right, cool. Is there any last words you want to leave people with before we head out for today?
Yeah, I just want to say that carbs, every macronutrient gets beat up at some point. Protein, fats, and carbohydrates. It depends on the year and the time of year, but everything comes through a shampoo rinse cycle because the fitness industry is filled with a lot of snake oil salesmen or a lot of confused individuals, and they need some new material to talk about. We want to educate you that you don't fear any food, protein, fats, and definitely carbohydrates, because I'm a believer that whoever created this thing called life wanted us to eat all three. And people, it's all where you get these three macronutrients from. And we're gonna create a world where you can have all three and be healthy and be happy and feel energetic and end the nonsense, the dispute on the internet, social media that's driving you bonkers.
And I think people have to remember that they shouldn't be beating themselves up about this stuff, right? Because that is never going to get you to a good place in life by being negative, right?
Yeah. You have to take ownership. There's no way that anybody at this point should think that, chips and donuts and pancakes with syrup all over is good for you. We wish we had that magic wand. But there's so much bad information out there that people are they don't know what to follow, and they're frustrated and they feel bad about themselves, and they shouldn't, because
it's information overload. They hear it from a million different people and they're just not sure.
It's the worst. We didn't grow up with this noise,
Yeah. All right, well, thank you very much for all the info. I think that was really great. Our viewers definitely learned a lot, and I'm looking forward to our next episode on carbs.
Yeah, thank you, Nick. Guys, we'll see you next time, right?
Yep, see you next time.
Like the video, subscribe, the bell notification so you don't miss any videos in the future.